Ulm, Montana, and I'm visiting this evening with my good friend and fellow combat veteran, Russ Bruns. And Russ, I just want to thank you, buddy, for letting us come out and spend a little time with you tonight. And you and I are just going to talk a little bit about our time together in Vietnam. But before I do that, I want to get a little background information. Where were you born and raised?
In Illinois.
What town?
Centralia.
Centralia?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you live there very long?
Oh, just a couple of years, and moved up to the Peoria area.
Okay.
It was right in the center of the state.
Tell me a little bit about your folks and what it was like growing up as a kid.
Oh, a typical kid. You know, my dad worked at Caterpillar. My mom was a house mom and housewife, and so we probably had the best years of our life. Well, lucky kids. We had a 4-acre field behind our house. We played ball and stuff in. And my dad bought a place up by Spring Bay, Illinois, on the river there. So we spent our summer months up there, just up on the river, just fishing and swimming and boating every day.
That sounds like a Tom Sawyer story.
It was.
And did you have any brothers or sisters?
I had 2 brothers.
Okay. And what are their names?
Robert and Richard.
And are they both still alive?
Oh no. My older brother, he passed away 2 years ago. My younger brother lives back in Illinois.
Okay. So, growing up, you went to high school in Peoria?
No, went to high school in Pekin.
Oh, Pekin. Is that where you went from?
Well, my folks moved from Peoria to Pekin, so.
How far apart is that?
About 12 miles.
Oh, so same neighborhood.
Basically,
Okay.
yes.
And when you were in high school, when you were a senior, for instance, was there any thought on your mind about Vietnam?
Not really, no.
I mean, I'm the same way. When I graduated from high school, my biggest thing in life was I wanted to make money and chase girls, and that was about my story. So I wasn't thinking, that I might get drafted or I might, have to go into the Army and go to Vietnam. So when I remember you told me you were working at a light shop or something.
A neon sign shop, yes.
Oh, was that your first job out of high school?
Well, that was even my job in high school.
It was in high school?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you'd done that for a while.
Oh, yeah. In the summer months, I went to work there. I started out as a weed cutter around the billboards and stuff. Then I just moved on up into. I did a little bit of everything there: sign painting, electrical work,
tube bending,
and tube bending.
Okay.
Yeah, tube bending.
And so, how old were you? Would you say when you were doing all those different things?
I started at 15.
And when you were really going after high school, were you there till you were like 16, 17, 18?
Well, I stayed there until I was 20.
Okay. And now, a lot of guys weren't married when they went to Vietnam. Some guys were engaged and some guys were married. What was your story?
I was married.
And how old were you when you and Becky got married?
I was 20.
Okay. And at that point, were you thinking of Vietnam?
Oh, I just, what was on the news, it really didn't bother me that much.
So it wasn't something you were obsessing over,
I wouldn't dwell on it, no.
worried about. So how did you meet Becky?
She was summer help at the sign shop through one of her class programs.
Okay. So she was still in school?
She was still in school.
A year behind you?
Oh, she's way behind me.
How far?
2 years at least.
Oh, 2 years at least. How old are you?
Yeah, I'm not telling now. I'm too old to tell.
You're 70, right?
I'm past 70.
71?
2.
Are you really?
Yes.
Well, you'd be the old man of the group, wouldn't you?
I'm close.
That's funny. So, okay, so she was at the sign shop, and from what I hear from a lot of your relatives, you weren't exactly an outgoing personality at that time. So how did it happen that you and Becky got together?
Oh, it was all in a dare. They dared her up front in the front office. It was her senior graduation party. They dared her to ask me to go to the party. No. Reluctantly, I said yes. So that's how it came about. It was on a dare.
I'll be darned. And you know, the guys were probably making fun of you, right?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. You know, you said you were working. Your thoughts was on money and girls. Mine was just on the money. I could care less about the girls.
Yeah, yeah.
That was just minor detail, you know.
Yeah. So did your company ever do billboards, and
Oh yeah.
was it in the days when they were putting them up with glue and all
Oh
that?
yeah.
So-
I did that too.
Okay, okay.
That's called pasting.
What is billboard pasting?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one day you got a letter from Uncle Sam.
Yep.
And what did it say?
Greetings. We'd like to have you in our outfit.
And what was going through your mind when you read that?
Ah, crud. Now, oh well. It's going to happen sooner or later.
What did Becky say?
Oh, great. Oh, we'd only been married 2.5 months.
Oh my gosh. So the honeymoon wasn't even over.
Not really.
Yeah, I mean, so 2.5 months, you tell her, honey, I got this in the mail. And did you say, I'm going to call and see if I can get out of it, or tell them I'm married, or?
I just went down to the draft board. They said, be sure you report if you're married. So I went down and I told them. That didn't make any difference.
Yeah. You know, isn't that something when you and I, that year that we got drafted, it was the largest draft in the history of our country. I mean, that month that we got drafted was one of the largest. I mean, man, nobody was getting out from underneath it. I mean, even guys that had college deferments, guys that were teaching, remember Teach was a teacher in college. I mean, they were grabbing guys any way they could. So, what do you remember? How long did you have from the greetings letter to actually show up and report?
I think it was 2 weeks.
Okay, and where did you show up to go in?
Chicago.
Okay,
I had to go to Chicago.
is that where you raised your hand?
That's where I raised my hand.
Okay, and then from there, did you go to basic training
I went down to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri,
for basic?
for basic.
Okay, had you ever been in that area before?
No.
So this was new to you, and
Yes.
and so tell me a little bit. Did they bus you down to Fort Leonard Wood?
Yes. They rode the bus all the way down.
That's what I did too, and from San Diego all the way up to Northern California, long Greyhound ride. The bus goes in. Maybe there was more than one bus, and they stopped at an area and they opened the door, and you guys started filing out. What was your first? What happened at first?
Just stand there and take the abuse they were giving you at the time. But I mean, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go?
What were your thoughts? What were you thinking?
Not much of anything.
So you're just going, I'm just going to go with it?
Just going with it. Not, being young and really not knowing some of this stuff. Some of the stuff was funny to me.
Yes.
Whatever the DIs were saying, it was just kind of funny because you don't hear some of the remarks out there.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Were there any long hairs that were on the bus with you?
oh yeah.
So would you say they were kind of hippie-like, or?
I think they were that way just try to see if they could get out.
Okay. And they showed you to your barracks. Did they ever ask you if you had anything that you needed to get rid of before you went in?
No.
They never asked if anybody had any guns or knives or drugs or?
No.
Okay. And you went in and you got a bunk. There were probably double bunks, top and bottom.
No.
Everybody was on the ground floor.
Everybody's on the ground floor
Okay.
at my receiving center where I went in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so what were the DIs telling you in there? What were they explaining to you?
Just make sure you get your gear in proper order, roll it, put it just right like it's supposed to be.
In the foot locker?
In the foot lockers
Yep.
and in your drawer, what you hung your uniforms up in the cabinet.
Sure, sure. So then you are going to be taken through the routine. You're going to go through the mess hall. And that was probably a different experience, right?
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
And then training, and you'd go to different training sites and so forth. And a lot of physical. Were you in good shape when you went in?
Oh, yes.
So the physical part of it was not a big deal for you?
Not to me, no.
Okay, so that's good. So that's, a lot of guys have trouble with that part because they're not in shape and boy, they push real hard. So during basic, did anybody say, well, remember when you took the battery of tests and it was supposed to show what you would probably be in the Army? Do you remember those?
Oh, yeah, I don't remember them,
But okay, and that was supposed to say, well, Rush, you've got talent in electronics, let's say.
No, mud puppy.
What are mud pup? What?
Well, with grunt.
Oh. So that you had no talent as far as the
None.
Army
I still don't have any talent.
recognized. So at the graduation, they call out names and say MOSs. How many in your class went 11 Bravo?
Oh, that's a big number.
Most of them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Same with us. So they said, okay, your next stop is AIT. Where did you go for that?
Fort Polk, Louisiana.
Ooh, Tigerland.
Tigerland.
Okay, and now Illinois, let's just think about the weather and the climate and how that was. How was it different down at Fort Benning or Fort Polk?
Still hot and humid.
Was that kind of a...
Oh, no, because in central Illinois you got high humidity anyway.
Oh, okay.
And
So that wasn't...
No
Tell
problem.
me what they taught you in AIT.
What they taught me in AI? Oh,
Basic, you got basic rifle marksmanship, first aid, that kind, gas chamber, that kind of stuff. But AIT, tell me what did they treat you differently in AIT than they did basic?
well, a little survival course, how to do that. But mainly just, basically how to protect yourself and watch for what, you're coming up for you, what you're going to be in stored for.
Yep. Do you remember when you'd go out to the different stations, I'll call them, or instructional areas?
Yeah.
They had the bleachers, and then when the cadre was giving the instruction, remember we'd set up in the bleachers,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Do you remember if a lot of the instructors were Vietnam vets?
Most of them were that I had
Yeah.
down in Fort Polk, yeah.
Why do you think they did that?
Well, so you realize that this is for real, not fun and games, This isn't something you see on TV with John Wayne where everybody's going to be a hero, and it doesn't happen that way.
Did you notice that a lot of the Vietnam vets had been injured and were, had come back out of the war? It wasn't like they were a cook or something. A lot of them were actual combat
Oh, yes.
veterans. And I didn't know it at the time, but they would get so serious with us that sometimes they'd get emotional. And I didn't realize what we were getting into until the first time I saw an instructor cry. Because he was begging us to listen, begging us not to fall asleep in the bleachers, begging us to listen because he didn't want another soldier to die in Vietnam. And that was when I knew that this is absolutely not fun, not a joke. You're going there. And so forth, and I think that's why the Army actually took those Vietnam vets and put them in those positions, because who can tell you the story better than the guy that was there, right?
Yeah, and a couple of them we had, they actually told us, if you guys don't want to listen, that's fine. If you want to get yourself killed, fine. But remember, you got buddies out there, and you keep on horsing around, jacking around like you're doing here in these classes, and you're going to get them killed.
Yep.
I mean, it's one thing if you want to, but don't get somebody else.
Yep. So graduation from AIT came. Did your folks come to your graduation?
Not down there, no.
Okay. You got orders, and you probably got a little time off to go home.
Yeah,
How long?
28 days.
Okay. And then they said you got to go, to an airport someplace, or?
Went to California, Fort Ord there.
Okay.
Then I went from there to Alaska. And from Alaska over to Vietnam.
So you did not go through San Francisco or Oakland?
No.
Wow. I thought everybody went through Oakland. Fort Ord, by the way, is where I took my basic and AIT.
No.
That's where I was at. So you're on that plane ride over. Do you remember how long it took to get to
No.
Vietnam? It was 20, 21 hours, I think. What were you thinking on the way over now? They've got a captive audience here. You're in a plane. You can't just say, I changed my mind.
No, just wondering what it's going to be like. So that's it.
And then
And then try to keep myself in one piece so I can come back home.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I always thought that too. I always wondered if I was going to come home, you know, and like I was going over there. And so they flew into Benoit, and then they opened the door of the plane. And what was it like when they opened that door in Vietnam and you went down and put your foot in Vietnam? What was your reaction? What was it like? What do you remember?
Well, it was hot. And it was just unbelievable. Something different is all it was, you know, when I got.
Did it smell different?
After being on the plane, yes.
But
No,
a lot of guys say that it was kind of a disgusting smell, and they didn't realize why.
I never did think that.
And it was because they burned the feces over there. They didn't have sewer systems, right?
Yeah.
And so that always put a kind of a foul smell in the air. And then from there you went to Long Binh. And you still don't know where you're going, what unit you're going to be in. You're just with the cattle going to Long Binh. And then do you remember being there a couple of days and going every day to see if your name's going to be called out and get your orders? Do you remember kind of a little bit about that?
A little bit about that, yeah.
And so you got your orders, and the guy yelled your name and said, 25th Infantry Division.
So?
And that's what you thought.
So?
Because like me, I had no clue. I had no clue about any of the units in Vietnam. Did you?
No.
And so then you found out in a quick hurry that you were going to a unit called the Wolfhounds in Cu Chi, and they were going to have you get on a deuce-and-a-half truck, and you were going to be driven there. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And
But the thing is that you know, let's back up a bit. When they took us from the airport, to, I guess I would call it the receiving center.
yes,
We got on the bus there, and the guy told us, "You're new in country here. What you guys need to do is find an old timer and learn from him." And someone said, how long's an old timer? He said, anybody who's been here 2 to 3 months.
yeah,
And I'll tell you right now, most of you guys are either going to be killed or wounded. So that's the bottom line. And that was a eye opener right there.
Yeah.
You know, you got 2 to 3 months is your expectancy to be here before you go back to the States. I thought, wow.
yeah. Obviously I got the same message.
Yeah.
Because coincidentally, we didn't realize it, but you and I, our future fate in life was to be connected right then and there when we got on that deuce-and-a-half truck and we went for a drive in the dirty, dusty, red, filthy place, no weapons, no protection, and the driver said, if we get ambushed, I'm just going to put the pedal to the metal and we're going right through it, we're not stopping. And my first thought was, well, why would they put us out there if we can't even defend ourselves? And then they took us to a place called Cu Chi. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And then when we got off the truck, what is your memory of that?
Find us them little tents and just storing our gear from that point. They were hotter than all get-outs, daytime and nighttime both.
And then do you remember when we actually joined the unit?
When we went out to the field, not really. I don't.
Do you remember where the unit was at?
That was at
Crockett, okay. And there were 3 of us. There was Ray Bourgeois, myself, and you, and I think Bob Noel might have been on that truck. And when we got off, remember somebody told us to go find a guy named Sergeant Glover and he'll tell us what to do?
Nope.
You don't remember that
No,
part?
no, I don't.
What do you remember about first day in Crockett?
Not much of anything really, John, because just everything's all new to you, and you're trying to take in the whole surroundings, and you're just trying to soak it all in. And then you're going over here, and you need to build yourself a place to spend the night. That's where you're going to be staying.
The half round.
Yeah, yeah. Make yourself a Holiday Inn over here. So yeah, that's about it. I mean, outside of that, guys just telling you go here, there. And
So who was your bunk buddy?
you were.
And we didn't know each other from
No.
anything. And of course, both of us had we could work with our hands and so forth, and we figured out a way to get this thing and sandbag it. Remember, we did sandbags almost
Sandbags all the time.
all day. And it was the monsoon season, so remember it was raining
Yeah.
on and off. And do you remember the first guy you met? Not me, but I mean, do you remember one of the old timers that you met?
It was either Joe or Willie.
Okay.
I don't remember for sure. One of those two,
Yep.
I think it was.
And what was your impression of that? I mean, did they seem like they were very interested in us and wanted to help us, or?
Well, personally, me, I was kind of standoffish. Because, well, you finally told me you better get acquainted with some more people because, we're going to have to spend a year together and you can't be like that. So, yeah, I was just kind of standoffish and I just really didn't want to get to know anybody really.
Did you ever have your picture taken with Sheila the monkey?
No.
Did you ever have your picture taken in Vietnam?
No.
Were you ever?
And while he's saying that, I have slides that as he's saying no, I'm putting up
No,
two
I'm
pictures
just.
of him.
Were you in Vietnam?
I must have been because somebody shot me over there.
But for the longest time, you used to tell people you were never there,
That's right.
and you'd say, "Prove it. Prove I was there."
I know it.
And
And
of
it
course,
drove you nuts. I did it on purpose.
for years, it drove me nuts until I finally found some pictures, and then it was like the best day of my life,
Yeah.
and it was the best day of your kids' life too.
Well, yes, it was.
So, well, anyway, to make a long story short, the platoon that we were assigned to was the 2nd platoon, and there weren't very many guys in it.
No, not at that time.
And we found out later that they had just been pretty much decimated up there in the Hobo Woods area, and this was what was left of them. And so as the replacements started coming in, like you and me, I think they were glad to get replacements, but I think new guys were like, hey, you're going to get us killed here, because you don't know what you're doing. And we were trying to get one of them to help us learn how to survive. Like the sergeant told you,
yeah.
find a guy that's been there for a while. And of course, Willie, he was at the end of his tour, so he wasn't helping out much anybody. He was, just trying to live long enough to get on the plane to go home. Kel Johnson, same way. And so that was our first days in Vietnam, and the monsoon. Our first night in the half round was very interesting because we were on the ground and we put a poncho down and the two of us were in there, and I think we were really exhausted from just all the sandbags and just being in Vietnam was pretty nerve-wracking. And so all of a sudden the monsoon started, and when it came down, remember, in buckets, I mean, it came down in inches. And the next thing we know, we're floating around inside of our half round, and we were literally being flooded. And of course, we jumped up and jumped out and tried to figure out what wrong. And a couple of guys were laughing at us because and I think they knew exactly what was going to happen. But this was our baptism by fire.
Let's get the new guy.
Let's get the new guys. And Ray and Ed Rambo were in that bunker, remember? And it had a real deep entrance to it.
Oh, yeah.
it just filled up with, and so those guys were worse off than we were, actually, because they had like 4 feet of water in that deal. And because that bunker wasn't made right. So, do you remember the first time we went out of the wire?
Yeah,
What was the circumstance?
I think it was out through the pits out there.
Laterite pits.
Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly my memory as
So
well.
we went out there and we went out to set up for an ambush at night.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Glover was our platoon sergeant at that point, and Lieutenant Krebling was the platoon leader. And what I remember too is how Glover would always, especially to the new guys, he says, "I'm going to put you where I want you, and then you're going to set your claymores out." And last thing he said is, "For God's sake, make sure you're pointing it in the right direction.
Oh, yeah.
You know, don't make the mistake of having it pointing back, because if you set it off, you're going to blow yourself away." And of course, I know I was very nervous. It was dark, couldn't see anything. Crawled out to the end of my claymore wire and very carefully set it up, probably shaken. Got back, and now it's wait and see what happens. Well, you couldn't see, and I didn't really realize that, you know, the rear security was up above on those rocks, on the laterite rocks up there, and they had a starlight scope, so they could see pretty much what was going on. And what was it like that first time for you?
Well, it's kind of scary, really, because you don't know what's going on and what's happening, and and so you don't sleep very well.
Mhm.
So you're trying to, I guess you would say, first night out or whatever. You just want to stay alive.
Yep. Did anything happen that night?
Outside of somebody hitting a tripwire flare and setting it off, I don't think there was that
Okay.
night.
So then,
So with somebody come back in, we had those flares out there.
right.
Yeah.
Yep. And so then, do you remember? So that was our first experience,
That's
actually.
right, yeah.
What do you remember the first time we got on a helicopter? And what was the occasion? What were they doing with us on helicopters?
Well, I don't remember. I don't remember, John.
Well, it was out of Crockett. We were taking Eagle flights out of Crockett.
Crockett. We took several out of there.
Yeah, and the purpose was to take us out somewhere where they thought we could make contact, and
Yes.
they'd dump us off. Did you like flying?
Well, I love flying.
Yeah, I did too. And how many flights do you think you took?
Oh. Every one you took until I got wounded.
We
So-
took a lot of Eagle flights. And remember, 2 and 3 a day sometimes. They'd pick us
Yeah.
up, take us there,
To
pick us up,
someplace
take us
else.
there. And I was like you, I just love flying. And, a lot of guys said, "Oh my God, that was the worst fear I ever had because I figured we'd get shot down." And I didn't feel that way. I just loved flying until we got about 10 feet off the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Then I wasn't loving it quite as much as I did. But, tell me what you remember about day riffs. What would we do during the day when we were out walking around?
Just walk and look for whatever. The spider holes, tunnels, weapons, cash, whatever they had out. That's all we did, just walk around and look for that stuff.
Did we ever walk in the rice paddies?
Oh, yeah.
And
Almost all the time.
what was that like?
Like sometimes like walking in mud up to your kneecap.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I mean, it was a chore every time we went.
And in the heat
Yeah,
and so forth.
unbearable. Yeah.
So when you came into the platoon, you had an M16.
Yes.
Okay. And then there was a rather large weapon sitting on top of a bunker. It was right where Ray was at. And it was a shoulder-fired 90 caliber howitzer. And I still to this day have no idea how you and that howitzer got married.
I don't know either. I'm trying to think of that a long time ago. How did I ever wind up with that? But
I mean, here
I hope
you're
that
here
thing
you're
too
the
far.
you were only 92 pounds soaking wet,
93.
and here this how much how much that weigh that
It
tube
was 35 pounds.
with a round in it.
Yeah, I forget now what it depends on which round you had in.
But
that's what
it was pretty good weight.
Yes.
And then you had ammo bearers that
Yes.
carried 3 rounds apiece.
Right.
And what kind of rounds did you have available for that gun?
Flechette and HEs.
Okay, explain what an HE is.
HE is a high explosive.
Which would, if you fired it and it hit something, it would be like an
Yeah.
artillery round.
Yes.
Tell us what a flechette round
Well, a
is.
flechette round is like a fish hook. They're just basically a dart with a hook on them and it's straight.
How many flechette rounds are in one of those canisters?
I never did find out.
Thousands,
how many.
right?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
thousands. Make
And-
you look like a pincushion after I hit you.
Yep,
Or porcupine, whichever you want.
yep, no kidding. And so you ended up actually carrying that darn thing out in the field. I mean, it wasn't just sitting on the bunker. You
Oh,
actually
no.
carried it on missions and ambushes and so forth and so on. Was it quite a chore for you to do that? Physically, I mean, was it like, man,
Sometimes it was. It depends on where we were at. You know.
rice paddies would be unbearable, I would think.
Some of them were, but that I believe the worst day was when we came off that bridge and went on that sweep that day.
When
Yeah,
they got, the dog got heat stroke
Yeah.
and they had to,
I think
Not-
that was probably what the worst day I've ever had.
both of us.
I think everybody.
And if I recall, you fell behind,
I fell way behind.
and we finally got out of the rice paddy, and then I remember there was a Jeep, an old Willys, just a cab, and then remember the bed in the back, and it had been blown up. It was all rusted out, sitting there, and we walked past that, and whoever was leading that day said, "Okay, we're gonna go back to Crockett." And I said, "No, we can't go yet." And he goes, "Why not?" And I said, "Well, Bruns isn't here. You know, he's still coming." And the guy says, "Ah, the hell with it. He can catch up." And I thought that was no. I said, I'm not going until he gets back up here. Who knows what could have happened? I mean, who leaves one of their guys behind, right?
Yeah, I mean, they were loading up closing the back gate on the deuce and a half, and they were getting ready to pull out when I come back up around there. And Brogan was with me. I think
Yeah.
he stayed with me.
And he was an ammo bearer for
He
you.
was an ammo
Yeah,
bearer with me.
Dave
He
Brogan.
stayed with me.
Dave Brogan, yep.
Yeah. Otherwise, they were going to leave us.
Yeah, which to me, that was a wake-up call. I mean, I'm thinking, who does that? That
Yeah.
kind of pissed me off, you know, why would you leave somebody? You know, I just never even thought of it.
Yeah.
And it just turned out that some guys were just not good leaders. You know, they just didn't have what it took, I guess.
And I think that's why you, Ray, and I made the pact that we wouldn't leave, no matter what happened.
Yep. And so, did you ever get an opportunity to actually fire that thing?
Oh yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
That was on night that Freddie Hanna got it. We had an ambush patrol that came up, and we were hit. We went back out the same spot the second night in a row. We weren't supposed to do that. That's a no-no, but they were waiting for us that time, and that's when they got Freddie and
RPG'd the heck out of us.
yeah, and they got a couple others that night. We got fired at the end.
And
They
do
fired
you
us several
remember
times.
where you were at? We were in 2 files. Were you in the right file or the left file? Do you recall?
The right side.
And then what position? Front, middle?
Oh, I think I was somewhere towards the middle.
And then, of course, the chaos of war.
Oh yeah, it's
People are shooting. Did you just make a decision that you were going to fire at the direction that those
Well,
RPGs were coming?
yes.
Did you lay down or stand up?
Well, I was laying down.
Okay. And then tell me about that. What was that experience
Well,
like?
it was just, you know, you fired that thing and the blast off of it, and you know, you just move over a little bit because, you know, after I fired it, it really quieted down somewhat. So
Yeah.
next morning there was 3 or 4 of them that were not only but from the flechette rounds, but from everybody else firing at
Yeah.
them at that time.
Did you get to put another round in it that night, or was that just one shot and that was it?
That was a one-shot deal that night.
Okay. And then, of course, that was a horrible night for us. You know, Freddie Hanna got killed, of course, and then two of our friends, Alan Claymore Larson, got hurt bad enough that he went home, and then Clement Todd. Both of those guys were injured. They were just ahead of you. So in other words, those guys were just a few guys in front of you. So it could have been you, just as easily as anybody.
Well, I didn't shoot him.
No, oh no. They got
I'm just.
no, but they got shrap off the RPGs.
Yeah, they got off of that. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and
but that's
and you know,
just-
when that happened to those guys, number one, the Freddie Hanna incident just threw me into it
Well, you know, he just got back out in the field then from being hurt.
from Australia,
Yeah.
and he was short. Remember, he was
He was short. He had no business going out
yeah,
again.
and and then those two guys. What was weird is because we had just maybe had chow with them, and now they're gone, and they're not there. And well, where are they? Well, they got medevaced out of here, you know, and they're. And it always left kind of an empty feeling to me, almost like, wow, is that how it is? You know, you're with somebody one day and the next day they're gone. And that pretty much turned out to be the way it was, didn't it?
Yeah, that's how it was, yeah.
Yep. And so we did a lot of walking, we did a lot of flying, and we did a fair amount of shooting. And do you remember when we'd be out, there'd be little kids that would come out with little boxes, and they'd have Cokes in them.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, it always amazed us how they had them so cold out in the middle of no man's land. You know, but where'd they get the ice or how they keep them cold? But yeah, but they always knew where we were at. No matter where we came in when we were flying in, they'd always show up,
And that I always wondered about that.
selling us the Cokes.
Do you remember the one kid whose back was completely
Tom?
a mass of scars
Yeah.
from napalm?
Yeah.
He was a kid that had been caught in a napalm attack, and you know, he was a very cheerful kid, and I don't know whether it was just through being naive or whatever. I never thought that he was out there to gather information and then he'd go back and tell somebody, and then but as we found out later, historians tell us that those Coke kids were actually directly in contact with BC mostly. And then they would go and say they have so many guys, so many rifles, one big rifle, that type of thing. And then that helped in their planning, and that was their intelligence. Do you know who else turned out to be BC informants? Were the barbers.
Oh, yeah.
And I every time I think about it, I think of when they were shaving my neck with that straight razor. I always felt a little uncomfortable, and it turned out that they were going home every night, and they overheard
Oh, yeah.
what guys were talking about in the barber shop. And did you read the book, The Tunnels of Cu-Chi?
Yes.
And remember how they would make notes, and then it went down the line,
Yes.
and so they didn't have a telephone. They had people running through the tunnels and stuff, taking this information back to a headquarters. And so, yeah, Coke kids, I'll never forget them. And do you remember they'd bring out ice cream every once in a while?
I don't remember.
It was like a popsicle,
Oh, that, okay.
and they'd say, what flavor? And there was red, and there was green, and there was yellow. And you'd say, I want that cherry one. Okay, and they'd give it to you, and you would taste it, and it was banana. And you'd say, I want that other one. And you tasted it, it was banana. It was different colors, but it was all banana. They didn't have any flavors but banana flavoring. And that was kind of an interesting thing. So, do you remember the first time that we got shot at on purpose when we got ambushed?
Oh, let's see. Well, I remember the first time we got shot at, but it wasn't by the enemy. It was a friendly fire, shooting in the wrong direction, set up in the wrong direction.
And was that at night?
That was at night.
Yep. And will you ever forget the sound of metal flying in the air over your head?
No, nothing. Yeah, it's from the
That's a
scrap metal.
That's
Yeah.
a helpless feeling,
Oh yeah.
you know, because the next one, you just don't know where the next one's gonna be. And so those were experiences that, you know, anybody that really wasn't out in the field, you'd never know about that kind of stuff.
No.
And what was a gunfight that we were in that you specifically remember as being one of the first ones that, hey, we're really in a gunfight here?
I don't know, John. I really can't. It was that night when the Freddy got it. I mean,
That was a real gunfight.
That was the first real gunfight that I can remember.
Yeah.
It comes to my mind
Yep.
anyway.
Do you remember the first time we popped an ambush?
No, I don't. No.
I'll refresh your memory. They took us out and they set us up behind a couple of dikes right next to a hooch, a village hooch. And so we were like in an L, and you could have thrown a rock and hit that hut. And they told us before we left that they had intelligence that there was an officer, a VC officer, and a village chief that were supposed to be meeting somewhere in that area, and if we were lucky enough, maybe they'd walk past us. Do you recall that circumstance at all?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and then, of course, they did. They came out of that hut and walked beside us, and of course we opened up on them, but they opened up on us too. I mean, it wasn't just like we shot, they fell down dead, and that was over with. And do you remember what it was like to, know that we were that close and that they were shooting back?
It's hard to remember, John. I mean, it's just think about it. It's one of those things. It just happened.
Yeah. Would you say that you were scared in Vietnam?
I was what?
Scared?
Were you scared?
Yes.
Okay, there's your answer. Yeah. Every time we go out at night on an ambush patrol, anytime we were out walking on a rift during the day, there's always that element of surprise that somebody's going to pop up out of a spider hole or something and take a shot at you. Like you say, if you're not scared, then you're dumb.
One of the worst days of our life, yours and my life and Ray's life in Vietnam, is the day that they helicoptered us out to the outside of a village, and we were a blocking force. We were supposed to be a blocking force, and we were sitting there, and all of a sudden there's a gunfight going on in the other side of the village, and of course communication said, okay, Bravo Company is moving in, and the assumption is that they were going to push them right into us. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
But that didn't happen. And so our company commander told everybody to get up and assault on line. Do you remember that day?
That sheer stupidity that day.
One of the worst days we had.
Oh, yeah.
Describe what that was like. And it was only coincidence that you were on my right and Ray was on my left. I mean, we hung together like that. Remember what assault on line meant? One step, one shot. One step, one shot. And you just keep moving forward. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And what do you remember that afternoon happening?
Well, that's when we went in through that, started in through that hedgerow. Nothing was happening to start with, and after we got in there, they popped up out of the spider holes and started shooting. Of course, they were shooting the guys behind us. The guys behind us was shooting at us, and then we were shooting back and forth at each other, really. And it was sheer chaos that day, and we had to get out of those. And that's when they brought in the jets and started bombing everything.
And napalm.
And napalm.
Do you remember the heat that we could feel, even though we were not in there? We could feel when those things would explode, man, you could just feel the heat really bad. And then they made us stay there overnight.
Oh, yeah.
And then the next morning, they said, we're going in again.
Yeah. Well, that night, you remember, they were just calling artillery. Delta was down at that one end. They brought them in. They called in artillery and was landing. The first 3 rounds, remember, landed short.
Yep.
and got some of their guys down at that
Yep.
end. It was short, and the shrapnel whistling by us even.
Oh, yeah, that was
And then
awful.
then the next day we had to go back in again across that line. Never did find anything.
Never found a thing. And that was another wake-up call for me. How could you expend that much resources, bombs, cobras, artillery, napalm? I mean, man, they threw everything but the kitchen sink in there, and yet not one single body.
Or even part of a body.
And then I thought that was odd. Did you think how
Oh,
is
yeah.
this possible?
Yeah.
So that was a pretty bad day. You know, like they say, that was a bad day in Dodge for us. And then, of course, after that, there were many other incidences. I remember they'd send us into villages, and we went into that one village that had, like the day or two before, another unit had been in there, and they'd gotten ambushed and tore up pretty bad. And of course, the company commander got angry and wanted us to go in there and enact some revenge. Do you remember that? And then we got in
Yeah.
there, and then do you remember what he told us to do before we left?
It torched the place. Yeah, that's what we did.
What was one of your last memories as we were walking out? You told me you turned around and looked back there, and what was I doing?
No, I don't.
Do you remember you said I was lighting a
Well, on the edge of that hooch, yeah,
The
like
roof.
that up. Yeah, but yeah. But that village, while we're in that village too, the South Vietnamese Rangers with the purple thing.
the Arvins?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Arvins.
Arvin Rangers.
They were interrogating some of those people in there. Well, you talk about brutality.
Oh,
They were
unmerciful.
brutal. But
Yeah.
the final word was torch it,
Yep.
because they are sympathizers, the whole village.
Yep. And again, for you and me, that's the first time we'd ever been exposed. I mean, we weren't trained to do that.
No.
We weren't expecting. And you know, you and I didn't have the advantage of, we didn't see the movie Green Beret, right? I mean, we weren't historians of the Vietnam. We didn't know what was going on over
No.
there until we were in the field doing this stuff. Did you feel bad personally about that village going up?
Not really. Not really. Because I didn't even give it a second thought. I figured if they're going to be sympathizers and we're losing guys, and that's the way it goes.
Yep. And of course, we also knew that the NVA were pushing on them real hard from the other side. In other words, they'd go in and say, if you have any help the Americans in any way, we'll cut your kids' arms off. And they would do that. I mean,
yeah.
they were really brutal, to their own people. So, do you remember? I think we were at Trang Bang on the bunker for a couple of days, and the 8-inch artillery was tracks were right behind us. The mechanized 8-inchers, and in the middle of the night they'd start shooting firing missions. Do you remember that? How the ground would shake and your ears would ring for hours after that? Do you remember that?
No, I don't. John.
Yeah, that was another thing.
I don't
And
do that.
they put us right in front of them. The bunker was right in front of the darn thing, so you couldn't. I mean, the dust would come up off the ground when they would fire. So as our tour went, we unfortunately, we were in the Iron Triangle. We got a lot of action in there.
Yeah.
Do you remember the day that we caught the prisoner in there? And they called in the Arvin interpreter.
Oh yeah.
Tell me a little bit what your memory is of that.
That guy, he led us around for all day long from one place to the other, and then the
Empty holes.
empty holes, yeah, and nothing came of it. And finally, the captain had his fill that day, and that's when he told us all, turn around and face out the other way. This guy's going to get it. He didn't get it. but he sure scared him enough that
He stuck the pistol in his mouth,
he was
cocked it,
gonna,
and
yeah, you can put that 45 round right through the back of his head. That was it. So he began to talk then. So that's when they hauled him off in the chopper too.
do you remember what happened when the chopper started going up, up, up?
Well, just a little bit of nudge and he fell out.
I
Right.
always thought he slipped on some 90 weight transmission fluid.
No, just making him scoot over so they have room to sit down. So,
And to me, that was the very first time I'd ever seen. You might see a movie, but this was real.
oh yeah,
And I remember the guy telling us, one of our sergeants saying, we're just going straight out of here. We're not going to go over there. We're not going to go look or nothing, because we were just. I think everybody was kind of shocked that happened. I mean,
I don't know if I was so much shocked as I was so disgusted just walking around. I'd
all day long. Yeah.
being led around like a puppet.
Do you remember a time when they had us go into this village and there was an old papasan that was squatted, there, and it was again the Rangers, the Arvin Rangers came in and just started yakking on him and slapping him around, and they laid him down on the ground and put a silk over his face and put water on it. Do you
Yeah.
remember that?
Yeah.
Now that disturbed me. I mean, here's this old man. I don't.
Yeah, I did kind of.
That really disturbed me. But to the Arvins, that was playtime for them. And so I started to think, maybe this is borderline not good. In other words, maybe, the Geneva Convention would say you're not supposed to take an old man, lay him on his back, put a silk cloth over him, and then waterboard him. Waterboarding is basically what it was. Mm-hmm. And that poor old guy, man, he choked, and it was terrible.
Yeah, but he wouldn't tell nothing though either.
I
got to give him credit for that.
He did.
He didn't say a word.
And so that those were the kind of day-to-day things that we experienced, and which just made Vietnam all not right. I mean, we were operating in a world of so many things that weren't right, and there was a time when we were, I believe, at Reed. I could be wrong. It might have been Jackson. I can't remember. And the artillery, they had a battery of artillery there, and all night one night they just shot constant H&I. Remember the harassment and interdictment? And so nobody could sleep, and it was just, every so many minutes, boom, they're going off again. And what they were doing is they'd taken a grid on the map, and it was supposed to be a free fire zone. No, there was not supposed to be any civilians or huts or anything or hooches. And then they would just sporadically just keep moving artillery fire around in that grid. And I guess the hope is that they'd hit something, like troop movements or something like that. And the next morning, our platoon was supposed to be rest. We were supposed to stay in and get our stuff straightened out and so forth. And this lieutenant from the artillery battery, the guy in charge of the artillery, went over and said, Jamie, can I borrow your platoon? I want to go out to the grid, and I want to verify how many body count we got. And Jamie said, sure. So Jamie didn't go. But this lieutenant let us out there, and Marquez didn't go either. So it was just, I think they thought we were just going to go out for a walk and come back. And unbeknownst to us, this lieutenant wanted so bad to have his ticket punched, and he knew that body count was the way to do it. And so that whole day, do you remember, we walked out there, and it was like a blast zone. Everything was tore up and broke, and limbs and holes. Do you remember? And it was the smell, the cordite, the explosive smell. And the longer we were out there, the more frustrated he got. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
And then finally, towards the afternoon, we hadn't seen anything. No blood trails, no drag marks, nothing. And so he looked at the map, and there was a graveyard not very far from where we were at, and he said, let's go over there. Just a little village with a graveyard. And so we marched through this
Yeah.
and then into the little village and to the graveyard. And there were 4 fresh graves that were there. And he lit up and he said, this is it. Now I know that these 4 graves are a result of what I did last night.
Yeah.
And so we marched up there and we were all standing around. And do you remember what the lieutenant said at that point?
Dig him up.
Huh?
Dig him up.
Who did he say that to?
Well, I had a shovel, so I started in.
Who was the next guy?
You and I was digging up. We dug
What-
him up.
Did we think anything of it when we started to do that?
He said, well, if it could be
A cache.
a fake here, and there could be some weapons and ammo
Yeah, he
underneath there.
was intent on that. He
Yeah,
thought,
he
oh,
was-
this is going to be a cache.
Yeah, so we're gonna do that. Well, then they got his body count too.
And so
So-
when we got down so far, they were mounded up. There were wooden planks,
Yeah,
and it was a pretty shallow grave, and it looked like it was a hastily
oh yeah.
done deal, and they just put wooden planks over the top of them. And then he made us take those planks off. And do you remember what we saw besides a dead body in there?
We drug him out.
And then they had a rice bowl
Yeah.
and a little teapot. And I didn't, it
And,
was all religious.
yeah.
The little ladder, do you remember that?
Ladder kind
And it was based on their religion,
Yeah.
that they needed that to go, the ladder to get out of here and go
Yeah.
to the next life.
Didn't
And
have enough food to
something
make
that-
it.
Yeah. And so we drug that body out, and of course it was just dirt. And I felt pretty bad about that at that moment. I thought, I don't think I signed up for this. I don't know what you were thinking, but I thought now we're getting into an area that I know this isn't right. And so then we thought it was over. We thought we were done. And so then we put the body back in, and he goes, do that one. Uncover that one. I know there's something in there. And we did the second one. And by the way, do you remember the smell?
Oh yeah.
I've never forgot it.
Yeah. It don't take long in the heat like that.
And they were bloated.
Yeah.
And so we did the second one. Same identical thing. Planks. Shallow. We uncovered it all. We took them off. And it's another person, another man. But they didn't look like they would be soldiers. As I recall, weren't they older?
They didn't look like it.
No.
But the thing that got me most of all was the old mama son standing over the
Oh.
side, crying and screaming because,
And when we uncovered them, she was shoving beetle nut up her nose because of the smell. But they were pissed. Those old mama sons. I know what they were saying. They were saying we're all going to hell for this, right?
Yeah, probably.
And so then you and I said to ourselves, I said, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah, that was it.
And he said, you guys do that third one. And I think we just said no.
No, we didn't do it.
And so then he turned around to his RTO, Jimmy Langley. You met him
Oh, yeah.
at the reunion. And he said, Langley, you go over there and uncover that one. And so Langley went over by himself with an entrenching tool, and it was identical, to our two. And now this lieutenant's furious. He just, without weapons, without something, without a bag of rice or something, he can't really fill out an honest field report, right? He's going to claim the 4 killed. I mean, that goes without saying. But it always was better if you had so many AKs, so many remember, in their
Oh, yeah.
reports. And so then when Langley did that, Langley was sick. He was almost throwing up. And he said, dig up that last one. And Langley just started taking it, and he scraped it off to the wood. And he just said, I can't do it anymore. And he turned around to this lieutenant and he said, if you want to see what's underneath there, you do it. And the guy took out knife, it was about like that, and he went over and stuck it between the slats. And he hit the stomach, and the gases and the juices and everything come out through that crack, and he hit to his knees and yacked and horrible, and the next thing I know, guys are piling the dirt back on the graves, and we marched back in. Never to know, you know, but I know for a fact, and Jimmy Langley told me this later, this guy went back and reported that we had like 15 body count, you know, 30 weapons. I mean, he just lied, completely lied about the whole thing. And so I don't, because he wasn't any lieutenant of ours, he was artillery. I never knew for years who that guy was. I could see him. I could close my eyes and I could see his face. Well, when I found Langley, he told me exactly who it was. And sure enough, I looked and I found his name and so forth, and he lives in Hollywood. And you know how I always like to find guys and stuff? I couldn't. You know, and then he found our website, and he put a message on our website, how excited he was, you know, that guys were finding each other, and he wanted to know if he could come to the next reunion. I mean, and I'm going, I just ignored everything. I never responded to the guy. I couldn't. I mean, that was such a terrible, that was traumatic, you know, for us to have to do something like that. And later, you know, when we talked to other guys that were in Vietnam, that wasn't an uncommon thing.
Oh, no.
I mean,
But
they
that was a common thing to make it look like a grave and hide everything underneath it.
Yep.
So.
And so that was a bad day. I remember that. That was a bad day for us. And let's skip forward a little bit to the day that you and Moose and Tennant were out on, I wasn't there, but I recall you went out to recover some alert team. Am I right on
Yes.
that? Describe, if you will, that morning before you guys ever even got out there. Describe how you remember the sequence of things, how they went.
Well, there was an alert team that was pinned down. So they put us on choppers. We flew out to help them. We landed. Of course, there was a little small arm fire, but not much of anything. And so when all of us showed up there, and then that team was able to move from its position. Then they wanted us, because there was a bunker, a spider hole up ahead, they wanted us to go up there and destroy it. So, I forget who, I think it was Brogan was with me at the time. We were crawling up, and there was fire, small arms fire going on at the time, at that point, because things were starting to get hectic at that time. I was crawling up there with my anointed to put an HE round into it. Whenever they brought in the helicopters and started dropping tear gas on us to flush them guys out of it. So we didn't have any mask at the time, and with the guys shooting at the bunkers, and we're out there in the middle of no man's land, and Brogan and I, we had to crawl back. I believe it was Brogan was with me. We had to crawl back and get out of that tear gas. Then they just said, we're going to stay here for a while. We'll wait until the choppers come to pick us up. The choppers never came back. They finally said it was too late in the evening, the afternoon, for anybody to come and get us. But they could bring us in a Chinook and drop off some wire, some minor stuff to make up for the night for protection. And about 1:30 in the morning, I forget who was out on the
Listening post?
LP out there, said there's all kinds of them coming. And somebody on the radio said, get back in here as fast as you can. And they come running back in, and drip flyers went off, and and everything just cut loose at that point in time. I mean, RPGs were coming in, the fire and everything else. So
Machine gun fire?
machine gun fire coming in and out both. I got off one round with a 90, and that was all she wrote. I don't know how many RPGs come in at me at that time, but there was.
You'd exposed
I was
the big gun.
Yeah, once that went out. You know, the rule is get the biggest weapon first. You don't go about the small one.
And then get the machine gun.
Yeah, then go from that point on. So that's what happened that night. So yeah, it was chaos that night. But we were set up. I mean, it wasn't even. It seemed like not even 5 minutes. They had all kinds of gunships, and Spooky was out there, and he was banking up and just opening up out there. They knew what they were doing. They set us up that night.
And Moose, was he by you?
He was just down from me on my right hand side.
And if I recall, you told me Joel Brown was there too, the black guy. And didn't he get a bunch of shrapnel on his back?
I think it was him. Then there was a Tennant.
Tennant was down there on the left.
On
yep.
the left of my.
And of course he got a horrible,
Yeah.
you know, an RPG
Yeah.
hit him in the head, and that was
Yeah,
the
that
end
was
of that.
Yeah, but I had to set up where if I had to use the 90, I didn't have anybody behind
Yeah,
me. So
oh yeah, you'd have cut him in half.
got the back blast.
So RPGs are coming in, and because you and I were there together the night that Freddie Hanna got it, we knew what it looked like when RPGs were coming in.
Oh yeah.
What were you thinking? I mean, were you thinking, I got to get my 16 going, or what was your next thing after you popped that round off?
Well, I needed more rounds is what I wanted. So, because if I could get a couple of the RPGs wherever they were flying from, it would help out.
Yeah.
But that didn't take. There was more of them than there was of me. No, that's add into that story real big in a hurry.
And you know, I've had guys tell me that, especially some guys that went through the Renegade Woods. That was after you and I were gone. That, and there's some interviews of guys saying, you know, it was the first time that we were getting it instead of giving it. In other words, the balance was, you know, usually we could get the upper hand and we'd call in help, but this time it wasn't that way, was it?
No.
You guys were really taking it.
Yeah, they had set us up. There was more than they had planned on being out there, and so I mean, but they were able to get the alert team out. They were able to give their information what they needed, but we were stuck there.
So, do you even remember when an RPG hit in front of you and it hit you in the face?
Just a big blast, a big bright light, and that was it.
Were you unconscious?
No.
So I'm still
awake.
What were you saying anything?
No, I couldn't do anything. Couldn't see anything. Couldn't find my weapon. You know.
What must have been going through your mind?
I hope these guys here can get these guys off our backs. But with that gunships and stuff coming in, I figured, well, this is going to help us out, and it was nasty.
Did you ever have a feeling of dread, like this could actually be it?
It could be, yeah. Because I mean, when you're blind and you can't see and can't do nothing, I mean, you have nowhere. If they say fall back or move over, you have no way of knowing what to do.
Did you know Moose was hurt?
No.
Did you know anybody else was hurt?
No, I didn't.
But you had to lay there and hear all of these weapons going.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if I found my 16, which way was I'm shooting? You know, that's just it. After I got hit, which way would I shoot?
Oh.
You know,
Did anything but your face take the impact of that?
Well, I got some down my ribs. But,
Okay. And how long do you think you laid there?
Seemed like forever, but it wasn't that long, really. It really wasn't.
15, 20 minutes?
Like I said, it's hard to say, John, because, you know, the heat of everything, time goes so fast, but yet it goes so slow.
Yep.
Oh.
So then do you remember hearing a helicopter coming in, a medevac?
Yeah.
Guys saying, oh, it's going to be okay, we're getting you to the...
Yeah.
And what was it like to be put on a medevac and you can't see anything?
Can't see, well, like anything, you don't know where you're going, what you're doing, what's happening. The next thing you know, you wind up in a hospital bed. You know, the guys are cutting your clothes off of and shoes, and they say, bam, next thing you know, you're out. I mean, I don't, whatever shot they gave me to put me out, I was out.
What do you think they were doing to you at that time that they didn't want you conscious?
Patching me up, I guess.
I mean,
Yeah,
dealing
yeah.
with your eyes,
You're dealing with my eyes,
and then
No.
did you wake up the next day?
well, I don't know how long I was out, John, I really don't. So, I mean, I woke up in the hospital, not being able to see. So,
Was your head bandaged?
yes.
Did anybody tell you, well, Moose is here and I mean, did you get any information
No,
about?
not who else was in that ward with me or where was that, nothing. Nobody said anything.
And so nurses must have come up and communicated with you and cleaned you up, and
Yeah.
did they say, now, we're not gonna be able to help you here, we're gonna have to send you someplace else?
Well, this is just a temporary deal now. You'll be going back to the States, so,
Oh, so you knew.
yeah.
And tell me a little bit about that. What was that like? Did they put you on a big jet?
I have no idea. I guess it was like a C-130 or whatever, a bunch of bunks and beds in there on the slings. And once again, after they got me on there, I don't know what they gave me, but I woke up in California.
No. Really?
Yes.
Well, that was probably the best.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when you think about it.
Yeah, I woke up in California in a hospital bed.
And where were you at in California?
I don't remember where I was at.
Hospital?
In the hospital there.
Army hospital?
I couldn't tell you. I think it might have been.
Okay. And so what was the progression of your treatment? I mean, are you trying to have somebody tell you what the heck's going on?
Well, I asked them, but it's your eyes, and they didn't know for sure. But as time went on, I'd already resolved myself after. I don't know how long I was in Cucci there, how long they stayed there. I think that was a couple of weeks. I'm not for sure, but I'd already made up my mind. If it's lights out, it's lights out. That's all there is to it. Yeah, nothing I can do about it. I'm gonna have to learn how to do something else. So from there, I don't know. From there, they sent me to Japan. Okay, and I was in Japan, so they'd already started me on braille and craft work with my hands.
No
So
kidding.
Yeah,
That was not a good prognosis.
no, yeah, because they figured I wasn't going to be able to see.
Mm.
So I forgot about Japan. Yeah, they sent me to Japan, then from Japan to California. Yeah.
And then how did you wind up at Fitzsimmons?
Well, they flew me to Fitzsimmons.
Was it because they were trying to get you to a place that had a more specialized?
Yeah, well, where they would deal with that.
Okay. And did you ever run into Moose? I mean, when did you and Moose figure out that you were in the same place?
Becky ran into him. I forget where someone was said, I don't know, but anyways, I think we might have crossed down in the doctor's office. I just don't remember how we come together.
But he got some in his eyes
he got
too.
some eyes too, yeah. Yeah, I don't remember how we came across each other. Yeah,
So Becky then came out
yeah,
at Fitzsimmons, and as I recall, she got a little bungalow.
yeah, a little apartment
I don't know
there.
what else. What would you call it?
Yeah,
It was just a
basement
small,
apartment, yeah.
little something like that. And she was there for the duration. She
Yeah.
came and committed that she wasn't going to go home
No,
until you did.
yeah.
That had to have been a good relief for you. That had to have been a source of encouragement.
It was, but it wasn't. At first, I thought she was just coming out for a visit for a week or so. And if that's what it was going to be, then I don't want to see her. I don't want no part of this because I don't think I could stand it. She came
You mean
out.
to have her leave?
Yeah, and she came out and she said, I'm not going anywhere. She stayed, so that was a relief knowing that she's going to be there with me.
Yep. And then you and I, through your wife, communicated.
Oh, yeah, you dirty old man, you.
What do you mean?
Oh, some of the letters you wrote, buddy, I don't know. Yeah. You still got them. When you going to give them back to me?
Oh, God.
They'll know. Nobody else will ever see them but you and I and her. She used to read them to me. You should have been ashamed of yourself.
I guess I didn't know she was going to be reading them to you.
Well, what you'd think I couldn't see.
No, I'm just kidding. They weren't that bad, but and of course I was always, in the back of my mind I was always worried,
Yeah.
and I was going, God, I felt so helpless I couldn't do anything, and then when I finally got out, the very first place I went was Denver.
Denver.
And I came and spent some time with you and,
Yeah.
and Becky, and boy, it broke my heart. I mean, you don't know
Yeah.
this, but just to see you, and that condition, I guess, or situation, and again, I felt like, how can I fix this? How can I help this? And there was nothing.
Nothing anybody can do.
Nothing I could do. So then, as I went home, I promised you, we'll keep in touch, which we did. We kept in touch all those years, and then sooner than later, you started coming out to Montana in the summer. And then you'd camp at the KOA or
Yeah.
whatever, and then we'd drive around, and you had this dream of someday living in Montana. You were still a postman, I think, back in Peoria.
Yes.
And every year that you came out, it was a little stronger. You felt a little bit more sure that you wanted to come to this place. And then as years went by, I'll never forget one time you called and you said, well, we're coming out this time and we're looking. We've decided I'm going to pull the plug, and so we want to look for a place to live. And I said, well, remember how we used to drive around?
Oh, yeah.
And that's a fixer-upper. Remember how Becky'd say that old falling down
Yeah.
shed was a fixer-upper? So I called my buddy realtor Len Reed, and I said, my buddy's coming from Illinois, and they're seriously looking for a place. And it just so happened that he had some lots down here on the river. And when you got to town, he brought you out and showed you. And I guess your first impression was, hey, this has potential.
No, we had just gone up to Canada. Alexis was with us at the time. We'd gone up there and we received a phone call from you. That's when he said, the realtor found a piece of property, 20 acres like you're looking for, and I think you might like it.
Yep.
And then we left Canada, come down here, we drove out here and looked at it. She loved it. We walk out here, you were with us when we walked out here.
I remember.
Walked all the way back out here and looked around. And she'd already, as she looked at the property, already planted her house where she wanted it. So I mean, it was from that point. So we made everything.
You bought it.
She bought it.
Yeah. And of course, you didn't come right out.
No.
You didn't build the house right then and there. But your neighbor, Gail, you told him, well, I've got this prime piece of grain field here. If we'll let you continue, extend your crop there if you'll pay the taxes on the land. Is that the arrangement that you had with him?
No, we paid the taxes. He just took care of it. I mean, he was able to.
Was there fencing up at that time or not?
On that,
Yeah.
but on both, just on the one side, on the.
So did he have to put fence up? And
No, he didn't do anything. He just brought his horses down, and they just grazed out there.
I thought he drilled some seeds out here once in a while.
Well, he would every once in a while to
So the ground wouldn't erode or whatever?
he planted out here
Yeah.
and fertilized it. He said, I'll do that. I'll take care of it. I can bring
Yeah.
my horses down here.
Yeah, yeah.
I had no problem with that. So that's
So-
what he did.
Yep.
So,
And then the day came that you retired, and I had a discussion with Becky, and she said, well, it's going to be a little rough for a while because I don't have a job. And I was on the board of directors at the credit union at that time. And it was coincidental because I got off the phone with her and went over there and we had a board meeting. And the subject came up, we need a head teller. And we need one pretty bad. And I went, I know, I've got one. And they looked at me like, what? And Steve looked at me and he says, are you serious? And I go, I've got the lady. I know that she's going to be here in this job. So he says, well, give me her phone number. and I'll give her a call. And Steve called Becky, and I think it was a short discussion. She faxed him her resume, I think, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, didn't he hire her almost on the,
On the phone,
yeah,
yeah, that was unbelievable. The first time a conference like that on the phone was hard to do. I mean, it was just, forget what it was. 6 weeks later, she was out here, something like that,
Yeah.
not very long.
and you know, and I've told Becky this, and I've told you this, Steve, on many occasions over the years, said that Becky was the best hire that he ever made. And you and I both know it's
Yeah.
true. She was,
Yeah.
and boy, everybody loved her out there and respected her. So that worked out to be really
Yeah.
a good situation. So, you know, that kind of brings us to today. And, you know, you and I have stumbled around out here, and we've done projects together, and we're getting old, and we're not quite as able as we used to be, but we're still, as long as we're on our feet, right? And I almost lost you.
Nah.
I got a phone call that Russ is probably not going to make it, you know, through the night. If you want to say your goodbyes, you better get up here to Great Falls, up to the hospital, and I got a little bit of information about something to do with your heart and your kidney failed. I mean, and I'm just going, oh crap, this is all bad, right?
Yeah.
And when I came up there, you probably don't remember it, but I walked in and there were so many tubes and gear and everything going into your body that I thought, I've never seen anything like it. And I just started crying because I've never seen you.
Good thing I didn't see it, because I hate to see a grown man cry.
Oh, buddy, let me tell you, it was rough. And I just came over and you know, you were sleeping, and I put my hand on you, and I said a prayer. You know, I just said, Lord, it just can't be his time. You know, so do whatever it takes to make sure that he gets through this. And of course, you did, and which was a miracle, you know, because there was a lot wrong and a lot of potential things that could have,
There's still a lot wrong.
you know, but not as bad as it was then.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so yeah, so that was kind of a bad time, you know, in our lives when that happened.
Yeah, then I didn't no sooner get out of the hospital and starting to recover, and you dragging me up the fishing trip, and I'm sitting there and you make fun of me because I'm nodding off holding my coffee cup. Shame on you. Guys take pictures of me. Oh, embarrass me in front of my family like that, showing them the pictures. But you know what? I still love you, John.
I have no memory of this.
Yeah, I bet you don't.
I have absolutely no memory of this. So, is there anything that I haven't discussed about our tour in Vietnam that you want to put in?
We did have some fun times, John. There was some days in which we did have some fun times.
Yeah.
Some days that, I guess I don't want to say my most memorable one that I think about every year is at Christmas time. When Ray and I were when we were on the bridge, guarding the bridge, and it was Christmas Eve. And Ray and I were up in that tower with the starlight scope watching the river, looking for stuff. Ray says, I'm not getting out of this tower until I hear Bing Crosby sing White Christmas. We stayed up there until about 1 or 1:30 in the mornings. Somebody reaped the benefits of Bing Crosby and
No.
White Christmas. Because we didn't come down out of that. Whoever was supposed to be after us. So, I mean, yeah. And then we snuck down and got a quarter chocolate milk and drank that quarter chocolate milk when Bing Crosby sang White Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
What a memory.
That's one of those things that every Christmas I think of.
Yeah, what a memory. So, as we come to the end of the interview, I just want to ask you a couple of final questions. What is your definition of a hero?
The guys who didn't make it,
What made him a hero?
they gave their life.
Do you think about him? Memorial Day, Veterans Day?
Oh, off and on.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't it something? It's just part of your, what's in you
Yeah.
now. So, what does the American flag mean to you?
Means my freedom. My country.
Are you passionate about it?
I'll defend it again right now.
And when you see that the flag is used in very disrespectful ways, or you see at a football game they won't sing the national anthem, instead they take a knee, did that ever bother you?
Oh yeah. Very disrespectful.
Yeah.
I think it's also very disrespectful the way these people now sing the national anthem. They make it their song. They sing it the way they want to,
Yeah.
and that's
At
not
the
how
at the ball games and
yeah,
different things.
and
Yeah.
not how it was written, how it's supposed to be sang. And when they do that, I mute the TV or I also go to someplace else because
Mhm.
no, I didn't give you the freedom to do that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
And you know, this interview is going to be put on our website, and it's the reason we're doing this is not just for you and me, but we're doing it for our family,
Yeah.
our grandkids, our great grandkids, their kids, in other words, we're doing this so that in the chance that years from now, when you and I are long gone, one of those kids says, you know, didn't we have a grandfather or a great grandfather that served in Vietnam? And somebody will say, well, why don't you Google his name? And of course, you know, everybody will be
Oh.
Googling in those days. And guess whose interview is going to pop up? Their grandpa, their great granddad. And they are going to actually be able to see you in living color, talking and listening to your story. And I don't know a greater legacy that you and I can have, that to have them know that, you know, although history didn't judge our war favorably, we as individual soldiers were proud of our service, and we would do it again. You know, so one last question. What advice would you give grandkids, great-grandkids, several generations away from now? Look into the camera and tell them, what's your best advice for these kids?
That's a tough one, John. It's really a tough one. Some people say don't trust your government. Some people say examine everything real close and find the truth in it. You know, I'd say my advice to you is to examine things. Search it out and find the truth and make sure it is the truth. Not just somebody else's hearsay or something like that. But make sure it's the truth. That's it.
Would you advise them to be hard workers, be true to themselves, that type of thing?
Oh, most definitely, and definitely be a family man.
Mm-hmm.
Cherish your kids, your grandkids. Spend time with them. I see people nowadays who don't even take time to sit with their own kids, and, you know, at a meal or nothing. Your family is one of your most precious possessions you have. Once you lose that, you've lost everything.
Would
Yeah.
you like to tell all these generations to come how much you love them?
No, they don't know that by now, John. They never will.
But you really do love those kids.
I love kids.
Yeah. Which brings me to the final note. How many years did you play Abraham Lincoln in the during Lincoln's birthday or whatever?
Too many years.
Did you have the stovepipe hat and the whole?
I've got the stovepipe hat, and I had it, and the little bow tie he wore, and I had the whole thing.
Yeah,
so,
and you know
well,
you look just like him, right? People would look at you and just
I'm
go,
much better looking than him.
true. My friend, my cherished friend, thank you for always being there for me.
Thanks for John for always being there, buddy.
So I love you, man.
Love you too. Bud.
Okay.